Emily's life was turned upside down when she became trapped in a fake marriage with Ryan, a billionaire desperate to escape his family's demands. What started as a lie for money soon spirals into a real emotional battle, as both of them are forced to confront their truths. Will Emily escape the gilded cage she's trapped in? Will Ryan finally prove his sincerity? This story is full of twists, raw emotions, and choices that will leave you questioning the price of love. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more. Emily Carter didn't believe in fairy tales, not after the past few years. At 26, she lived in a shoebox apartment above a nail salon in East La, where the plumbing groaned louder than the traffic outside, and the only view was a brick wall with graffiti that changed weekly. The place always smelled faintly of acrylic fumes and fried food, but it was home. At least for now. Rent was overdue, again. The refrigerator contained half a loaf of bread, a single egg, and a questionable bottle of ketchup. Still, Emily painted every night, brushing colors onto worn canvases like she could scrub the weight of reality off her shoulders. By day, she juggled temp jobs, handing out flyers in the sun, doing portraits at the farmer's market, even dressing as a cactus mascot for a desert-themed kids' party last weekend. Art didn't pay the bills, not yet, and Emily had bills stacked so high they leaned like a weary house of cards. Her mother, Patrice, had been in and out of the hospital since Emily was 19, her kidneys failing slow and unforgiving. Dialysis was draining, physically, emotionally, and financially. Emily covered what she could, sending her mother extra cash when insurance didn't stretch far enough. Then there was her younger brother, Liam, 16 and sharp as a tack, still dreaming of college while reusing hand-me, down laptops and duct-taped sneakers. Emily didn't have time for dating, let alone daydreams. Her art was the only escape, even if it rarely sold. She painted what she couldn't say. The quiet ache of sacrifice, the bold colors of hope, the sharp strokes of anger. Her canvases filled the corners of her apartment like silent witnesses. She told herself, if she just kept going, just one more sketch, one more sale, something would shift. But today, as she stood on a rickety chair trying to change the flickering light bulb in the kitchen, her phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. She ignored it, probably a scam, or a debt collector. It buzzed again, then a third time. Curiosity got the better of her. She climbed down, grabbed the phone, and answered with a cautious, "Hello." A man's voice came through, smooth and measured. "Ms. Carter, my name is Alex Quinn. I'm calling on behalf of a private casting director. We're seeking someone unique for a high-concept reality performance project. Your name came up." Emily frowned. "My name came up. Where, exactly?" "We saw one of your open mic performances online, the live art and improv bit. You were magnetic, raw. We think you're perfect." She almost laughed. That clip had less than 200 views and was mostly her painting a sunset while telling a story about a stolen scooter. "I'm flattered," she said slowly, "but I don't do reality shows." It's not a show. More of an immersive experience, a blend of art, performance, and real-world interaction. Think of it as a role you step into for a few days. Fully paid, no auditions. Now she was suspicious. How much? "There's a $50,000 advance, tax-free. We wire it the moment you agree." The chair creaked beneath her as she sank into it. 50. For one weekend. The only catch is confidentiality and full immersion. You'll be playing a bride. Dress, ceremony, everything. Just follow the flow. Your performance partner will guide you. Emily blinked. So, a fake wedding. He chuckled. Of sorts, But think of it as the best improv gig of your life. 50,000 could cover her mom's treatment for the next year. It could buy Liam a functioning laptop, a tutor, new shoes. It could give her room to breathe, maybe even time to paint for real. Her heart pounded against her ribs, torn between skepticism and desperation. What happens after? You walk away. We wrap. You get paid. No strings attached. Emily looked at the cracked ceiling, the flickering bulb she hadn't fixed, the stack of hospital invoices on the table. She'd played stranger roles for far less. Where do I go? Alex gave her an address to a high-end salon in Beverly Hills. Tomorrow morning. Wear something simple. We'll take care of the rest. She hung up, her fingers still curled around the phone, the hum of traffic below fading into the background. For the first time in months, a sliver of something unfamiliar pushed into her chest. Hope, or maybe trouble dressed as opportunity. Either way, she was going. The next morning, Emily stood outside a glass palace that shimmered under the Beverly Hills sun. The salon looked like something out of a dream, or a celebrity Instagram feed. It towered between a row of boutiques, with names she couldn't pronounce and valet attendants who barely glanced at her faded jeans and Converse. For a brief second, she hesitated on the sidewalk, one hand gripping the strap of her thrifted tote bag. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe the call had been a scam, a prank, or worse. Then the front doors slid open, and a woman with a headset stepped out, smiling like Emily was royalty. Ms. Carter? We've been expecting you. Emily blinked. Yeah, that's me. Before she could ask a single question, she was swept inside and surrounded by a flurry of stylists who moved with the speed and precision of a pit crew. Her shoes vanished. Her tote bag was whisked away. A robe landed on her shoulders. Shampoo, conditioner, something that smelled like gardenias. Then hands massaging her scalp, curling her hair, trimming loose ends. Someone shaped her brows. Another filed her nails. There was light laughter, tiny sips of citrus water, and an endless stream of compliments she didn't quite know how to take. You've got great cheekbones, one stylist said, brushing foundation across her skin. Those eyes, another added, adding a faint shimmer to her lids. So expressive. Perfect for camera. Emily wanted to ask about the camera. Where it would be. Who else would be there? But every time she opened her mouth, someone redirected her. Just relax, they said. Enjoy the moment. After nearly 2 hours, they brought out the dress. It wasn't just any wedding gown. It was a silk and lace masterpiece that looked like it belonged in a royal ceremony. Creamy white with intricate beadwork across the bodice, soft layers of tulle, soft layers of tulle that shimmered with every step, and sleeves that hugged her arms like a second skin. When they zipped it up and turned her toward the mirror, Emily gasped. For a moment, she didn't recognize herself. The girl in the reflection looked like someone who belonged on the cover of a bridal magazine, not someone who'd just finished painting murals in alleyways for rent money. Her dark curls framed her face in soft waves. Her lips painted a dusty rose. Her lips painted a dusty rose, her eyes catching the overhead lights like stars. She twirled, the dress whispering against the marble floor, and felt a strange flutter in her stomach. This must be some budget, she murmured. Top secret project, one of the stylists said with a wink. Only the best. They gave her matching heels. Not too tall, just enough to make her posture elegant, and helped her into a waiting car parked outside. It was sleek, black, with tinted windows and a driver in a suit who nodded politely as she stepped in. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be, she replied, though her voice trembled a little. The car pulled away from the curb and glided through the city like it didn't belong in traffic. Emily watched palm trees blur past, wondering if any of this was real. She'd taken gigs in weird places before. Theme parks, hotel lobbies, pop-up, hotel lobes, pop-up parties. But nothing like this. Everything screamed high production value. Everything felt important. After about 30 minutes, the car turned into a quieter street downtown and pulled up in front of an old stone church that looked like it had been lifted from a European postcard. Stained, glass windows glowed amber and crimson in the afternoon light. The heavy wooden doors stood open, inviting. Emily stepped out slowly, careful not to trip over the train of her dress. The driver didn't offer any last-minute instructions, no script, no cue cards. Just a murmured, "Good luck, Miss Carter." Her heart thudded as she climbed the steps. Inside, the space was breathtaking. Vaulted ceilings, rows of gleaming pews, golden light pouring through the windows like something divine. A soft murmuring buzzed at the front, and Emily glanced up to see a few well-dressed people standing near the altar. Extras, she assumed. Maybe background guests. And then she saw him. The groom. He stood tall in a tailored black tuxedo, chestnut hair swept back, posture so calm it almost looked rehearsed. When he turned and their eyes met across the aisle, Emily's breath caught. He was striking. Not just handsome, but composed in a way that made him seem untouchable. Serious. Almost too perfect. This had to be the scene partner. She took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around the bouquet someone had pressed into her hand. One step, then another. The soft rustle of her gown echoed with every movement down the aisle. She reached the altar, smiled up at him, and whispered, The man blinked slowly, then offered the faintest smirk. "Just follow my lead," he said. And the ceremony began. The vows were recited in perfect unison. Emily's voice was bright, clear, and almost playful as she whispered the scripted lines, "I, Emily Carter, take you, Ryan Maddox, to be my husband." The words came easily, like a second skin. A rehearsed performance. She glanced up at him, her lips curling into a small wink, just to add a little extra flair for the invisible cameras she was sure were watching. This was her moment. The audience, whoever they were, would be impressed by her natural charm. She could already imagine them sending her another check for the next job, maybe even an actual acting gig. Something that didn't involve fake weddings. But when Ryan repeated the vows, his tone was not what she expected. It wasn't the playful, professional tone of an actor. His voice was serious, almost grim, like he was sealing a pact. Emily furrowed her brow, momentarily thrown off guard by the weight in his words. "I, Ryan Maddox, take you, Emily Carter, to be my wife." He didn't pause, didn't look at her the way a typical groom would. There was no nervous energy, no spark of excitement, just a steady, heavy calm that felt far too real. The priest's voice echoed through the church, a warm, kind presence, and Emily quickly shook off her discomfort. It was just method acting, right? She was playing her part. Everyone was playing their part. But as the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," Emily realized she wasn't ready for what came next. Ryan leaned forward without hesitation, his lips brushing against hers. The kiss was warm, unexpectedly so. It wasn't the brief, scripted peck she'd expected. It lingered a beat too long, sending an unexpected rush of heat through her chest. She pulled away slightly, blinking in confusion, a laugh escaping her lips. "Wow," she murmured, trying to cover her surprise with a smile. "You're really selling it." Ryan smirked, but his eyes were unreadable, as if the kiss had meant something to him, something she couldn't quite grasp. "We'll make it convincing," he said, his voice low, almost too low. Emily thought she saw a flicker of something else in his gaze, something she hadn't seen in a while, a hint of genuine emotion. She spun on her heel, expecting to hear the director's voice yell, "Cut!" at any second, or the cameras to come out from their hiding spots. But there was nothing. Just a quiet rustling of the guests, a few polite claps. She turned back to Ryan, her smile faltering slightly as she tried to piece it all together. Where were the cameras? Where was the crew? She had expected this whole thing to feel like a movie, but instead, it felt too real. The room, the atmosphere, the people. They didn't belong to a film set. They were real, and so was the situation. She couldn't shake the creeping feeling that something was off. "Well, where's the crew?" she asked, her voice unsure as she adjusted her veil, still trying to hold on to her composure. Ryan blinked, his face growing more serious. "Crew," he repeated, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What crew?" Emily's stomach twisted. "You know, the cameras, the director." Ryan stepped closer, gently guiding her toward the exit, his hand on her arm. "Just go with it for now, okay?" he muttered, his voice firm but calm. He led her toward the church doors, past the well-dressed people she'd assumed were extras. "We can talk after." "Wait." Emily started to protest, but before she could ask any more questions, she was swept outside and into the back of a sleek, black limo. The doors shut behind her with a soft click, cutting off any chance of escape. Ryan slid in beside her, his tie slightly loosened, his posture stiff and unnatural. He glanced at her with a strained smile, the weight of the situation hanging between them. "You're doing great," he said, as if trying to reassure her. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the words were caught in her throat. The limo pulled away, the city's bustling streets slipping by, and for the first time in a long while, Emily wasn't sure what was real anymore. The further they drove, the more her mind spiraled. She hadn't signed up for this. She hadn't agreed to be anyone's wife, especially not for real. This was supposed to be a job, a gig, a way out of her struggling life. But now it was something else entirely. She stared out the window, trying to collect her thoughts, but her mind was scattered. When they finally stopped in front of a luxurious hotel, its glass facade reflecting the setting sun, Emily couldn't bring herself to get out of the car. "This isn't part of the shoot, is it?" she finally asked, her voice small, desperate for some clarity. Ryan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slid out of the car, offering his hand to her, still that same unreadable expression on his face. "Just play along," he said, his voice a little softer now, as if trying to make the situation less intimidating. "For a few more hours. Then it'll all be over." Emily took his hand reluctantly, stepping out of the car. Her heart was racing, but it wasn't from excitement anymore. It was from fear. Something wasn't right, and she needed to find out what it was before it was too late. The hotel lobby was everything Emily had imagined. A massive chandelier hung from the ceiling, sparkling crystals cascading down like liquid light, casting a soft glow over the marble floors. Every corner of the room was polished and pristine, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and freshly brewed coffee. Staff glided by in crisp uniforms, their polished shoes barely making a sound as they moved through the opulence. Emily, however, felt out of place. Her faded sundress and worn sneakers seemed like a joke in the midst of all this luxury. Ryan stood beside her, his presence just as cold and distant as it had been since they left the church. He wasn't smiling anymore, his jaw tight and his eyes distant. Emily wanted to say something. Anything, but the words tangled in her throat. She had so many questions, so many things she needed to understand, but it was as if he was keeping her at arm's length. Her heart pounded in her chest as they were escorted through the grand lobby, past the polished marble columns and velvet curtains. The staff all smiled and bowed their heads, greeting them as Mr. and Mrs. Maddox. Emily couldn't help but wonder if anyone else could see the tension crackling between them. At the elevator, the doors opened and the doorman ushered them inside. Ryan didn't look at her. He stared ahead, his fingers drumming absent-mindedly against his leg. Emily shifted uncomfortably, still reeling from the confusion of the ceremony, the kiss, and the sudden disappearance of the cameras that should have been there. What was this? Some kind of sick joke? She couldn't take it anymore. "Ryan," she began, her voice shaking. "What is going on? Where's the crew? Where's the director? This isn't part of the plan, is it?" Ryan turned his head slowly, his gaze meeting hers. For a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret. But it was gone just as quickly, replaced by the same steely expression he'd worn since the limo. "You're doing great. Just follow my lead, okay?" His voice was firm, but there was an edge to it now. Something that made her heart twist uncomfortably. The elevator dinged softly and the doors slid open to reveal a private penthouse suite. The view was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, the sunset casting a golden hue across the skyline. But all Emily could see was the tightness in Ryan's shoulders, the way his jaw clenched as he stepped into the room. She followed him, her eyes scanning the luxurious surroundings, feeling like a fish out of water. She dropped her tote bag onto the couch, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor as she moved to take it all in. "This is insane," she muttered to herself. "Is this some kind of joke?" Ryan didn't answer right away. He walked over to the bar, poured himself a drink, and took a long sip before setting the glass down with a soft clink. Emily watched him, her confusion mounting. The weight of the situation felt like it was crushing her. She had agreed to a fake wedding for a job, but everything about this felt real. The hotel, the dress, the kiss, it was all too convincing. And now here she was, standing in a penthouse with a man she barely knew, who had just tricked her into marrying him for God only knew what reason. "Ryan," she said, her voice firmer this time. "This isn't funny. I didn't sign up for this. Where's the crew? When do we—" "There's no crew, Emily," he interrupted, his tone sharper than before. "There was never a crew." Her stomach lurched. "What? What do you mean? You lied to me. All this? The wedding, the cameras?" Ryan turned to face her, his eyes darkening with a mixture of frustration and something else. Something she couldn't quite place. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I thought it would be easy, just a few days of pretending. A way to get my family off my back." He took a step toward her, his hands raised in a gesture of explanation. "I hired you to be a stand. In bride. I thought you'd just play the part, collect the money, and leave. That's all. But now—" He trailed off, his words hanging in the air like a broken promise. Emily felt her chest tighten as the realization hit her. This wasn't a movie. It wasn't a job. She was legally married to this man. To Ryan Maddox. A man she barely knew who had used her in a game she didn't even sign up for. Her heart pounded, her breath quickening as anger surged through her. "So what? You think you can just pay me to play house? You think you can just—" She stopped herself, hands trembling at her sides. "You lied to me, Ryan. You told me this was a job. You told me it was a film. I thought I was helping you out, but this is something else. You—" Her voice broke and she took a deep breath, trying to hold it together. "This isn't a game." Ryan stepped closer, his gaze softening for a moment, as if he was struggling to find the right words. "I never wanted this to happen. I thought it would be easy, a quick fix. But now we're here, and—" And now we're married, Emily finished for him, her voice low and steady. She met his gaze with a mixture of anger and disbelief. For real. Legally. Ryan nodded, his eyes searching hers, but Emily could see the uncertainty behind them. He had no idea what to do now. Neither did she. She grabbed her bag from the couch, her movements stiff and determined. I didn't sign up for this, Ryan. I didn't sign up for any of it. She turned on her heel and started for the door, her heart racing, her mind spinning. But just as she reached the threshold, Ryan's voice stopped her. Please, he said, his voice almost pleading. Just stay. For a little while longer. I'll fix it, I swear. Emily paused, her hand on the doorknob, her thoughts a tangled mess. But something in his voice, desperation, guilt, maybe even fear, made her stop. For the first time since they'd met, she wasn't sure if he was just a man playing a part, or if something else was at play here. She turned back to him, her face hard but her heart unsure. I don't know if I can do this, she said softly, the words heavy with meaning, but I'll stay. For now, but no more lies. The days blurred together, one endless stretch of polished floors, sparkling glasses, and strained smiles. Emily had agreed to stay, reluctantly, but every passing moment seemed to remind her just how deep she was now buried in this web of lies. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was playing a part in someone else's drama, a drama she never auditioned for. And yet, here she was, married, legally, to a man she hardly knew for reasons she couldn't quite understand. Ryan had kept his distance, his words reserved, his demeanor colder than usual. He was kind, but distant, like a man trapped in his own lies, trying to make it through the motions without cracking. The hotel was luxurious. Yes, but Emily felt like a stranger in the penthouse suite they were sharing. Everything was meticulously clean. Everything was perfect, except for the tension that clung to the air between them. She tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the money that would change her life, but every time she looked at Ryan, the weight of their situation pressed down on her chest like a boulder. She spent most of her time in the suite, wandering from one room to another, trying to ignore the truth that kept swimming at the back of her mind. What was she doing here? Why had she agreed to this? It wasn't about the money anymore. It wasn't about saving her mother's life or helping Liam with his future. It was about being trapped in a game she never wanted to play. But she couldn't walk away. Not yet. The money was too important. And deep down, there was a part of her that still held on to the tiny hope that this would somehow lead to something better. Something real. One evening, after a particularly awkward dinner with Ryan, she excused herself to the balcony. The city lights flickered below, casting a soft glow over the skyline. The wind brushed her hair back, and for a brief moment she felt free, untethered from the lies, the confusion, the overwhelming chaos of her life. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside her. When she opened them again, she saw Ryan standing in the doorway watching her. His gaze was intense, like he was searching for something, answers maybe, or forgiveness. He stepped out onto the balcony, the sound of his footsteps heavy against the floor. He didn't speak at first. They stood in silence, the tension stretching between them like an invisible thread. I'm sorry, he finally said, his voice quiet, almost fragile, for everything. I know I messed up. I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought this would be easy, just a little ruse to get my parents off my back. But I didn't expect it to turn into this. I didn't expect you. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She turned to face him, her arms crossed over her chest, the cool night air biting at her skin. What does that mean? She asked, her voice steady, but laced with frustration. What do you want from me, Ryan? You've already lied to me. You've already dragged me into this mess. And now you're asking me to pretend, to play your wife in public and act like everything's fine. Ryan looked down at the floor, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of defeat. I never meant to hurt you, he said, his voice strained. I thought if I just did what they wanted, if I just went along with this fake marriage, it would be over quickly. But then, I don't know, something changed. You changed everything for me. I didn't expect to feel the way I do. I didn't expect to feel the way I do. I didn't expect to want more than just a quick fix. And now I don't know how to get out of this without destroying everything. Emily stared at him, her mind racing. She didn't know what he was talking about. She didn't know if she could trust him. But there was something in his eyes, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before, that made her falter. She wanted to scream, to shout at him for dragging her into this mess, but instead, all she could do was breathe. She wasn't sure what to say, what to feel. Her heart was torn between anger and something else, something she couldn't quite name. I'm not your solution, she finally said, her voice low but firm. I'm not your prop. I'm not some prize to be won or used to get what you want. You've already gotten what you wanted from me. Your parents think we're married. You don't need me anymore. Ryan stepped forward, closing the gap between them. That's where you're wrong, he said softly. I need you. I need you more than you realize. Emily's breath caught in her throat as his words sank in. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His gaze held hers, intense and unyielding, and for a moment she wondered if he was telling the truth. But then she remembered everything, every lie, every deceit, and she pulled away from him, shaking her head. You don't get to just turn this around. You don't get to just turn this around. You don't get to make it right by saying some words and expecting me to fall for it. But even as the words left her lips, she knew something had changed. The wall she'd built between them, the anger, the hurt, it was all starting to crumble, piece by piece, and just like that, Emily realized the truth. She didn't know where this was going, but she couldn't walk away either. Not yet. Ryan's voice broke through her thoughts. Stay with me, Emily. For a little while longer. I'll make it right. I swear. She hesitated, her mind torn in every direction. But in that moment, with the night sky above them and the city spread out beneath their feet, she didn't know what to say. She didn't know if she could ever trust him again. But for some reason, she couldn't leave him either. Not yet. The days that followed felt like a strange dream. Emily had agreed to stay, at least for now, and the tension between her and Ryan lingered like a heavy fog. She spent her time in the penthouse trying to process the chaos, all while keeping up the charade for the world outside. She played the role of the perfect wife, smiling and nodding through their public appearances. But inside, her heart ached with every step she took in the gilded cage Ryan had unknowingly built around her. She wasn't sure who she was pretending for anymore. Him? Herself? Or the people who had already bought into their fake marriage? It wasn't just the lies that wore her down. It was the feeling of being trapped. The penthouse had become a beautiful prison. And it wasn't just the mansion's marble floors or the high-end decor that felt suffocating. It was Ryan. He was always there, always in her space, always reminding her that this was real for him, that he never meant to hurt her. But every apology felt empty. Every sweet gesture was tinged with desperation. Emily didn't know if he was just trying to convince her to stay, or if he genuinely regretted the mess he'd created. Either way, it didn't change the fact that they were legally married now, bound by a contract neither of them had fully understood when it was signed. Ryan, for his part, seemed as though he was walking a tightrope. He tried to make things comfortable, always asking if she was okay, always stepping back when he saw the frustration building in her eyes. Yet, despite his best efforts, the distance between them kept growing. The tension was palpable. And the more they spoke about their situation, the more Emily realized how deep the hole he had dug for both of them really was. One evening, they were at a dinner with his family, a formal affair in a posh restaurant. Ryan's parents, Victor and Claire Maddox, sat at the head of the table, their eyes constantly scanning the room with a critical precision that made Emily feel like she was under a microscope. The conversation flowed smoothly, all business and pleasantries, as if nothing had changed, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. Ryan was the perfect son, the perfect heir, and she was the woman who had fallen into their world through a mix-up, nothing more than an obstacle in their grand plan. As the night wore on, Emily found herself retreating into her own thoughts, absent-mindedly pushing food around on her plate. It was a far cry from the life she had known, from the chaotic comfort of her apartment with her mom and brother. Her life-in-law now felt like a distant memory, like a different version of herself she'd left behind. She felt out of place here in Ryan's world, with its polished silverware and glass walls. Everything about the evening felt fake, except for one thing: Ryan's hand subtly resting on her thigh under the table. For a brief moment, she looked up at him, and for the first time since she'd agreed to stay, she saw something in his eyes that wasn't just guilt or frustration. It was tenderness. It was raw, unexpected, and everything she had been avoiding. For a fleeting second, she wondered if this could be real. Could she let herself feel this for him? Or was she just another player in his game, a pawn to be discarded once the show was over? But just as quickly as the thought appeared, it was gone. Ryan's hand remained on her thigh, but there was no comfort in it anymore. Instead, it felt like a reminder of everything she was pretending to be, everything she was pretending to be, everything she was pretending to want. Finally, the conversation turned to their so-called honeymoon, and Emily snapped back to reality, her mind scrambling to keep up with the direction of the discussion. Ryan's parents were discussing flights to Paris, a trip they insisted the newlyweds take for the sake of appearances. As the details rolled out, Emily felt a pang of panic in her chest. She didn't want to go. She didn't want to play along with this charade any longer. She wanted out. The next day, she found herself on the balcony of the penthouse again, staring out at the city below. She closed her eyes, trying to find some clarity in the chaos of her thoughts. That's when Ryan joined her, his footsteps heavy against the floor as he approached her side. "I know this isn't easy," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "But we're in this together. I won't let you go through this alone." Emily didn't turn to face him. Instead, she took a deep breath, her mind spinning with conflicting emotions. She wanted to believe him, she did. But every time she looked at him, all she saw was the man who had dragged her into this mess. "You said you didn't want this," she replied, her voice shaky. "But it's not just about what you want anymore, Ryan. I'm stuck in this too. And I don't know if I can keep pretending." Ryan's voice softened. "I never wanted you to feel stuck. I just wanted a way out of my family's plans. I never meant to bring you into this, Emily. But I don't want to lose you. I don't want this to be some game." She turned to face him then, her heart racing. For the first time, she saw the rawness in his eyes. The same look that had been there the night of their fake wedding. The same look that had pulled her in despite everything. She could see it now clearly, that he wasn't just playing a role. He was as trapped as she was. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered, the weight of it all settling in her chest. Ryan reached out, his hand gently cupping her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "We'll figure it out together," he said softly, his voice steady, and in that moment, Emily didn't know if she could trust him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, they were both exactly where they needed to be. The days in Miami stretched on like a surreal dream. Emily was still reeling from the chaos of the past few weeks, her fake wedding that turned into a real marriage, the lies, the deceit, and the unsettling moments where she wondered if anything in her life was still her own. But somehow, she found herself playing the role of Ryan's wife in public, keeping up the act for his family, his business, and his parents. It felt like she was floating in a sea of luxury, her every move scrutinized by the world around her. Yet, she still couldn't shake the feeling that she was drowning in a situation she never asked for. The luxury villa in Miami was exactly what she had expected. Tall, gleaming white walls, a private beach that stretched out into the horizon, and a pool that reflected the sky like a giant mirror. Yet, despite the beauty surrounding her, Emily felt a gnawing emptiness. Ryan was around, but not really. He was always just a step away, always there, but never really with her. He would smile at her during the family dinners, his hand brushing hers under the table, but his eyes were always distant. It was as if he was trying to convince everyone, his family, himself, and maybe even her, that this marriage was real when all Emily could feel was the cold distance between them. One evening, after another strained dinner with Ryan's parents, she retreated to the balcony. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted in shades of pink and orange. The view from the balcony was breathtaking, an endless stretch of water meeting the darkening sky. But Emily couldn't focus on the beauty. Instead, her mind raced, spinning with everything that had happened, everything that had happened, everything that had happened, everything that still hung in the air between her and Ryan. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Ryan standing in the doorway, his figure silhouetted against the light inside. He stepped out onto the balcony, closing the door behind him, and for a moment they stood in silence, the sounds of the ocean crashing below them, filling the space between them. "I thought I might find you here," Ryan said, his voice low and hesitant. His usual confident demeanor was gone, replaced with a quiet vulnerability that Emily hadn't seen before. She didn't answer right away. She just stared out at the horizon, trying to make sense of everything. "You don't have to do this, Ryan. You don't have to keep pretending," she said finally, her voice shaky but firm. "I'm not some prop in your game. I'm not here to play your wife for your family's approval." Ryan stepped closer, his shoes tapping softly against the floor. "I know," he said quietly. "I never wanted it to be this way. I never meant for you to get caught up in this mess. I thought it would be easy, just a few days of pretending. But it's not that simple anymore. You're not just some actress playing a part. You've become something. Real to me. And I don't know what to do with that." Emily turned to face him, her heart hammering in her chest. She hadn't expected him to say that, hadn't expected him to admit that there was something more between them. But she wasn't ready to let her guard down. "You think I'm just going to forget about everything? All the lies, all the deceit? I don't know if I can trust you, Ryan. You dragged me into this without asking, without even thinking about what I wanted. What if I'm just a way to get out of your family's pressure? What if I'm nothing but a pawn in your game?" Ryan's face hardened with frustration, but there was something else in his eyes too. Something raw, something real. "I'm not using you," he said, his voice stronger now. "I never wanted any of this. I wanted out of the situation. Yes, but I didn't want to hurt you. And now that I've got you here, I don't know what to do with myself. You're right to be angry. You're right to be angry. You're right to feel betrayed. But I can't keep pretending that this," he gestured between them, "is nothing." Emily swallowed hard. His words were unexpected, but they didn't erase the anger, the betrayal she still felt. He had put her in this situation, lied to her, manipulated her into playing the role of his wife, and yet, as she looked into his eyes, she couldn't deny the tenderness in his voice, the sincerity that she hadn't seen before. "I don't know what you want from me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You've already put me through too much, and now you want me to stay, to keep pretending. I don't know if I can do that." Ryan took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. I don't want you to stay just for show. I don't want to keep pretending either. But I can't undo what's been done. And I can't walk away from you. Not after everything." For a long moment, Emily didn't say anything. The weight of his words hung between them, and she was too afraid to acknowledge the part of her that felt the pull, that longed for something more, even if it was a terrible mistake. Finally, she exhaled, her breath shaky. "You're asking me to stay," she said softly, "and I'm asking myself if I can trust you again, if I can even trust myself after everything that's happened." Ryan didn't answer at first. Instead, he stepped closer, his hand reaching out as if unsure whether to touch her. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said quietly, "but I'm asking for a chance, just a chance to make it right." Emily looked at him, the pain in her chest slowly melting into something else, something she wasn't ready to name. She still didn't know if she could trust him, but for the first time since this whole mess began, she was willing to see where it would take them. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But this time, we do it my way. No more lies." Ryan nodded, his hand finally finding hers, and for the first time in a long time, they stood there, together, still lost, still unsure, but somehow no longer alone. The next few days in Miami were a whirlwind of confusion and half-truths. Emily had stayed, reluctantly at first, but as time passed, something in her began to shift. Ryan's presence, though still distant at times, had taken on a strange, unspoken sincerity. His moments of vulnerability, those rare instances when his guard dropped, made her question everything she thought she knew about him. But the lies still lingered, like a shadow between them, and Emily couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that the truth was still out of reach. Ryan, for his part, seemed to be in over his head. His usual composed and calculating demeanor had slipped. Emily caught glimpses of the uncertainty that flickered behind his eyes. But even as he tried to make amends, the weight of their fake marriage, the contract they'd unintentionally signed, loomed large. He continued to play the role of the perfect husband in front of his family, his business partners, and the world at large. But Emily wasn't fooled. She could see the cracks in the facade. The moments when his smile didn't quite reach his eyes, when his hand lingered too long on her waist, or when he caught himself before he said something too honest. One evening, after a long day of pretending at a family gathering by the beach, Emily found herself alone in the villa's garden. The night was warm. The sound of the waves crashing softly in the distance, and the stars above shimmered like diamonds in the clear sky. She leaned against the stone railing, trying to calm her mind. She didn't belong here, didn't belong in Ryan's world. Everything about this situation felt wrong, from the wedding to the press tours to the carefully curated moments of happiness that were supposed to convince everyone, including themselves, that this was real. It wasn't real. None of it was. Just as she was about to pull away from the railing, Ryan appeared behind her, his footsteps soft on the stone. "I didn't think I'd find you out here," he said, his voice surprisingly tender in the quiet of the night. Emily didn't turn around. She couldn't. "I needed some space," she replied, her tone distant. She wasn't angry anymore, not exactly, but the confusion still gnawed at her. "Why do you keep doing this, Ryan? Why can't you just let go of this charade?" He hesitated, then stepped closer, his presence nearly overwhelming. She could feel his warmth even before he spoke again. "I don't know how to let go of it. It started as a lie, and now I don't know what it is anymore." He reached out, almost as if unsure, his hand brushing lightly against hers. "I never wanted this, Emily. I never wanted to pull you into my mess." Her heart clenched at his words, but she still couldn't face him. "But you did," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "You lied to me. You used me. You never asked for my side, never considered what I wanted. You just threw me into this mess without even thinking." Ryan sighed, a deep, heavy sound that seemed to carry all the weight of the past few weeks. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could control it. I thought I could fix everything by controlling the situation. But I see now I can't. And the worst part is, I've been trying to fix everything except the most important part." He turned her toward him gently, making her face him for the first time that evening. "I've been trying to fix my family, my image, my business. But I didn't see how much I was breaking us, how much I was breaking you." Emily's breath hitched in her throat as she finally met his gaze. His eyes were darker now, full of regret and something else. Something that mirrored the uncertainty she felt. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know if I can keep pretending like this is okay." His hands cupped her face gently, his thumbs brushing against her cheeks as he looked at her with an intensity that left her breathless. "You don't have to pretend anymore," he said softly, his voice raw with emotion. "I'm not asking you to stay just for the show. I don't want to keep living this lie. I want you to stay because I don't want to lose you. I know I've screwed up, but I'm asking for a chance to make it right." Emily felt the walls she had built around her start to crack. She had spent so much time trying to keep her distance from him, from the reality of their situation. But the truth was that the connection between them was undeniable. She didn't want to feel this way. She didn't want to fall for him, especially not after everything that had happened. But as Ryan's gaze held hers, she realized that her feelings for him were already more complicated than she had ever imagined. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she said, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. "You've lied to me, Ryan. And I'm not sure I can ever forget that." He nodded, his eyes softening. "I don't expect you to forget. I just want the chance to prove that I'm not that man anymore. That I can be the man you deserve." Emily didn't know what the future held for them. She didn't know if she could forgive him, or if they could ever truly make things work. But as she looked at him, really looked at him, she realized that for the first time in a long time, she was willing to try. Just try. "Okay," she whispered, her voice thick with the weight of the decision. "Let's try." Ryan's eyes brightened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he smiled, genuinely, without the mask of his carefully constructed life. "I'll make it right, Emily. I promise." And in that moment, under the starry Miami sky, Emily didn't know where this would lead. But she knew one thing for certain. They were no longer just playing a part. Something real had started between them, and that was enough to take the first step forward. Together. It had been a few weeks since Emily had made the decision to stay. Things between her and Ryan had changed, but not in the way she had expected. They were still playing the part of a married couple for the world to see, but the underlying tension between them was harder to ignore. The once bright glimmers of connection had dulled into awkward silence and unfinished conversations. Emily had hoped, even briefly believed, that things would evolve into something real. But with every passing day, she felt more like a guest in Ryan's life, a stranger in a marriage that was supposed to be a charade. The pressure of it all was beginning to suffocate her. She'd put on a brave face in front of his family, grinning through dinners, parties, and photo shoots. But behind closed doors, Emily was exhausted. She didn't want to be Ryan's perfect wife. She didn't want to smile for the cameras, or pretend that the grand gestures of their fake marriage, luxury hotels, expensive dinners, and private jets, meant anything more than just a performance. She wanted to find herself again. She wanted to stop pretending. One evening, after another forced family gathering, she found herself standing in front of a window, staring out at the Miami skyline. The city was alive, its lights twinkling like stars scattered across the dark canvas of the night. She exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, her mind wandering. She should have been happy. She had everything she'd ever dreamed of: money, luxury, a man who was willing to do whatever it took to keep up appearances. But none of it mattered. None of it felt real. She heard the soft click of the door opening behind her, and for a moment, she thought it was just her mind playing tricks on her. But then, Ryan's voice, tentative and low, broke through her thoughts. "Emily, Emily."
She didn't turn around. "What is it, Ryan?"
He hesitated before taking a few steps toward her, his presence suddenly far too close for comfort. "I think we need to talk," he said, his voice strained, almost as if he was searching for the right words. "I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending like everything is fine when it's not." Emily's heart raced. She turned slowly to face him, her gaze hardening. "Pretending like everything is fine," she repeated, her voice thick with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You're the one who wanted all this. You're the one who dragged me into your world, made me a part of this ridiculous lie. And now, you're tired of pretending?" Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if he was fighting to find the right thing to say. Then, finally, his voice broke through the silence. "I'm sorry. I know I messed up. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I thought I could fix it all with a lie. But now I see how much I've hurt you." Emily stared at him, the frustration and confusion that had been building inside her finally breaking free. "You think saying sorry is going to fix everything?" she snapped, her hands trembling at her sides. "You've taken my life, my choices, and turned them into something that's not even mine. I'm not a character in your story, Ryan. I'm a real person with real feelings, and I'm done pretending." Ryan's face softened, the sharp edge of his words retreating. "I know, and I don't know what to do about it. But I can't let this go on anymore, Emily. I don't want to keep living like this. I don't want to keep living like this. I don't want you to feel trapped." The words hit her harder than she expected. She wanted to push him away. She wanted to scream at him for making her feel like she had no control over her own life. But as she looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in weeks, she saw the same vulnerability in his eyes that she had seen on the day of their wedding. The same man who had fooled her into thinking he was someone else was now standing in front of her, raw and exposed. And despite everything, she couldn't turn away. "I don't want to be trapped either," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "But I don't know how to fix this, Ryan. I don't know how to forgive you for everything you've done." Ryan stepped closer, his voice soft but firm. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'm asking you to give me a chance. A chance to prove that I can be the man you deserve, the man who will make things right." Emily's mind raced. She wasn't sure if she was ready to forgive him, to let him back in. But the truth was, she didn't know what else to do. She couldn't keep pretending that their marriage, their life, was a performance. She needed something real, even if it meant risking her heart again. "I don't know if I can trust you," she whispered, "but I'll try. I'll try if you promise me something." Ryan looked at her, his expression filled with uncertainty. "What?" "Promise me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "that we'll stop pretending, that we'll start being honest with each other. No more lies, no more games." Ryan's eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, Emily saw the man she had hoped for all along. "I promise," he said quietly. And in that moment, something shifted between them. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close. But for the first time in weeks, Emily felt like they were finally on the same page. No more pretending. No more games. Just two people trying to find their way back to something real. The tension between Emily and Ryan had reached a breaking point. After weeks of pretending, playing the part of a perfect couple, living a life dictated by expectations, she was exhausted. Each day felt like a performance, with every word, every smile carefully curated, every action measured for the benefit of his family, the press, the world outside. And yet, no matter how hard she tried to play along, the emptiness continued to grow inside her, gnawing at her, making her question everything she had come to believe about their relationship, about herself. She stood in front of the mirror that night, staring at the reflection of the woman she had become. Someone she barely recognized. The extravagant dress she had worn that day, the smile she had flashed for the cameras, the laughter that had echoed in the ballroom. All of it seemed so far removed from who she truly was. She was tired of hiding behind a mask, tired of pretending that this world she had been thrust into had anything to do with her. She had come here looking for a way to help her family, to give her mother the medical care she needed, to make a better life for her younger sister. But somehow, the lines had blurred. She wasn't sure where the performance ended and her real life began. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She turned, surprised, but then the door creaked open, and Ryan stepped inside, his usual confident posture replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. His gaze searched hers, lingering, waiting for her to speak, but for the first time in a long while, Emily didn't know what to say. "I know I've messed up," Ryan said quietly, his voice carrying an unfamiliar weight. "I've been pretending. We both have. And I don't want to do that anymore." Emily's heart tightened in her chest. She didn't want to hear the same empty apologies. She didn't want to listen to him tell her that he had been lost or confused. She was done with the excuses. But as Ryan took a hesitant step closer, something shifted in her. His words weren't the rehearsed lines of someone trying to maintain control. They were raw, real, and desperate in a way that took her by surprise. Thought this was going to be simple," Ryan continued, his hand trembling slightly as he ran it through his hair. "I thought if I could just get my parents off my back, if I could just fulfill my responsibilities, that everything would fall into place. But now it feels like I've lost myself, and I don't want to lose you, Emily. I don't want this marriage to just be a contract, a game we play for the cameras. I want it to be real. I want us to be real." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had heard him, but the words didn't seem to make sense. After everything, the lies, the manipulation, the hurt, he was standing here asking her to believe that something between them could be real. Could she really trust him after all the damage? Could she give herself to him when every part of her felt shattered? "I don't know if I can trust you," Emily whispered, her voice wavering. "I don't know if I can believe anything you say anymore." Ryan nodded, his eyes dark with regret. "I understand. But I want to try. I'm asking you to try with me, Emily. I know I've made mistakes, but I don't want to fix this with money or by pretending. I want to fix it with the truth. I want to be honest with you about everything. I want to be honest with you about everything. I want to start over, if you'll let me." Her heart raced. The part of her that still cared for him, the part that had wanted to believe in this marriage, flared up, and for a brief second, she was tempted. Tempted to let go of the anger, to forgive, to trust him again. But just as quickly the doubt crept in. The lies, the manipulation. How could she just forget all of that? "Do you know what it feels like to be used, Ryan?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "To be dragged into a world you don't belong in. To have everything about you decided for you. I was just supposed to be your pawn. Someone to play the part, to be the bride for your family's convenience. You didn't even ask me what I wanted, what I needed. You didn't care about me. You didn't care about me. You just wanted what was easiest." Ryan's face fell. and he took a step forward, as if wanting to bridge the distance between them. I didn't think about how all of this would affect you. I didn't consider your feelings, your life. I'm sorry for that, but I want to make it right. I can't undo the past, but I can try to be someone you can trust. Someone you can try to be someone you can trust. Someone you can rely on. Emily's eyes welled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She was too tired to cry, too tired to hold on to the bitterness that had kept her going for so long. She wasn't sure if she could forgive him, not yet, but she knew she couldn't keep running from this either. The truth was, she didn't know where their story was going. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in weeks, she realized that maybe, just maybe, it was worth taking that first step toward something real. "Okay," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Let's try." Ryan's face softened, a mixture of relief and gratitude crossing his features. He stepped closer, slowly, as if waiting for her to change her mind. But Emily didn't pull away. Instead, she met him halfway, her hand trembling slightly as it reached for his. This wasn't the end of their journey, not by a long shot. But as their fingers intertwined, for the first time in a long time, Emily felt a flicker of hope. The next few days blurred into each other, each one indistinguishable from the last. The days of playing house with Ryan felt increasingly like a trap that she couldn't escape. Emily had hoped things would shift when she agreed to stay, when she decided to give this farce a real shot, hoping for something genuine to emerge. But nothing changed. It only became more suffocating. She had found herself slipping deeper into a life that wasn't hers, into a role she never auditioned for. She was caught in the web of Ryan's family, his business, and now the suffocating expectations of a marriage that, at its core, was built on lies. Every day was a performance. Every moment felt like another scene in a movie where Emily was the lead, but not the one writing the script. Ryan would smile at her at the breakfast table, his eyes apologetic, but that only made it worse. His presence, once comforting in moments of doubt, now felt like a reminder of how much she had lost. Every gesture he made, the way he touched her arm when he thought no one was looking, the moments when their eyes would meet across the room, felt like a tether pulling her deeper into a life that didn't belong to her. Yet she couldn't escape. Not yet. The $30,000 was already in her bank account, the money she had promised her mother for treatment. But the real temptation, Ryan's offer of a way out, of freedom, still dangled before her like a prize she couldn't touch. He had promised her $5 million to stay for just a few more days, to play the role of his wife for the sake of his family's approval. And at first, the money had seemed like a lifeline. But the longer she stayed, the more it felt like a trap. The more Ryan said he was trying to fix things, the more he seemed to deepen the hole they were both in. It wasn't that she didn't care for him. She couldn't deny the moments when he'd looked at her with those eyes full of guilt and regret. There was something there, something real, that she couldn't ignore. She had seen the way he helped her mother, the way he took care of the small details, the way he genuinely tried to make her feel at ease in the world that had been forced upon her. But every time she let herself feel that pull toward him, another part of her screamed that this was a mistake. She had already given him enough of herself. She had already played this part too long. One evening, after yet another public appearance, a dinner with his parents and business partners, where she had once again smiled through the discomfort, she found herself wandering the empty halls of their hotel. The sound of her footsteps echoed unnervingly loud in the silence. She was tired. Tired of pretending, tired of being used as a pawn in a game she didn't want to play anymore. She needed space. She needed to breathe. It wasn't until she reached the rooftop that she found solace. The cold wind hit her face as she stepped outside, the city sprawling below her, its lights twinkling like stars scattered across the earth. She leaned against the railing, closing her eyes for a moment, letting the cool breeze calm her frayed nerves. She needed answers. She needed answers. She needed to find her own way, separate from Ryan, separate from the mess that had become their lives. She couldn't let herself get caught in his web anymore. That's when she heard the familiar sound of footsteps behind her. Slowly, she turned around and there he was, Ryan, standing just a few feet away, looking unsure, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He wasn't dressed for a public appearance now. No more tuxedos or polished shoes. Just the man who had tried to fix everything by throwing money at her problems. "I didn't know where else to go," he said, his voice a little shaky. "You've been distant lately. I know I've messed up, Emily. I know I've hurt you, and I've tried to fix it. But I don't know how to get you back." His voice broke slightly, but he quickly recovered. "I need you to know that I'm not doing this for anyone but you." She looked at him, her chest tight. For the first time in weeks, she saw him, not the businessman, not the actor in this play they were both stuck in, but just Ryan, the man who had made her laugh, the man who had apologized for the mess he'd made, the man who had tried to fix what was broken even when he didn't know how. "I'm not a prize you can buy, Ryan," she said, her voice firm, though her heart raced. "I'm not here to play your wife. I'm here because I thought there was something real between us. But now, I don't know what to believe anymore." Ryan took a step forward, his expression softening. "I know, and I don't expect you to believe me right away. But I'm asking you to stay. Not for the money, not for my parents, but for us. I want to make this work, Emily. I want to find a way to fix everything. Together." Her heart pounded in her chest, the words hanging between them like a decision she wasn't ready to make. She had been running from this moment for so long, afraid to face the truth, afraid to face the truth, afraid to admit that maybe, just maybe, there was something real here. But she wasn't sure anymore. She wasn't sure if she could trust him again or if it was worth the risk. But as she looked at him, something inside her softened. Maybe it was the sincerity in his eyes, or maybe it was the fact that she wasn't the same person who had walked into his world months ago. Whatever it was, she realized that she didn't have the answers. She didn't have it all figured out. But one thing was certain. She was done running. The next step, whether it was toward him or away, had to be hers to take. "I'm not making any promises," she said softly, "but I'll stay. For now. Let's see where this goes." Ryan smiled, his eyes full of something she hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. And for the first time, she felt it too. The days that followed felt like they moved in slow motion, the weight of Emily's decision lingering in the air between her and Ryan. She had agreed to stay, but something in her heart felt unsettled. The contract they had both signed, the lies they had both told, seemed to follow them like shadows in every corner of their lives. She had thought that by agreeing to this fake marriage, she could help her family, give them the life they deserved. But now she wasn't sure anymore. Every step forward felt like 2 steps back, and the farther she walked with Ryan, the more she felt she was losing herself in the process. Ryan was trying. She knew that. He kept his promises. No more pretending. No more games. He had stopped making empty gestures of affection in public and began to show Emily that he was serious, that he wanted more from this than just the illusion of a perfect marriage. But despite his efforts, Emily found herself slipping away from him. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't her life. This wasn't the life she had envisioned for herself, and it definitely wasn't the life she had imagined when she first signed up for this fake marriage. But the offer still lingered. $5 million. A fortune that would solve every problem she had. every problem her family had. Her mother's medical bills, her father's never-ending shifts to pay for their crumbling apartment, Jenna's future. All of it could be solved. All of it could be fixed with just a few more days of pretending. She had promised herself she would do it for her family. And yet, as the days passed, Emily started to feel the weight of the decision pressed down on her more heavily than ever before. The money was right there in front of her, but it didn't feel like enough anymore. She couldn't keep pretending. She didn't want to live a life based on money and lies. One evening, she found herself alone in the penthouse suite, the weight of her thoughts pressing on her chest. The silence was deafening. She'd been running on autopilot for so long, pretending for Ryan, pretending for Ryan, pretending for his family, pretending for his family, pretending that everything was okay. But the truth was that nothing felt right. She felt like she was losing herself, losing her sense of who she was. She needed a break, a moment to just breathe, to think. Ryan had stepped out for a business meeting, leaving her alone in the luxurious yet suffocating suite. Emily stood by the floor, to ceiling windows looking out at the city. The lights of Miami stretched out before her, like a landscape she didn't belong to. She had been to places like this before, but never like this. Never in a life that wasn't hers, never in a marriage that wasn't real. The sound of the door opening behind her made her turn, and there he was, Ryan, stepping inside, his face tired but determined. He had that familiar look in his eyes, the one that had drawn her in all those months ago, the one that had drawn her in all those months ago, the one that was still there, buried beneath the surface. "I've been thinking about what you said," Ryan began, his voice calm, measured. "I don't want to keep pretending. I don't want this to just be about the money, about the show. I want us to have something real. I want us to have something real. I want to make this work." Emily felt her chest tighten at his words. She had heard him say these things before, but this time there was something different in his voice. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, but still, a part of her hesitated. Could she really trust him again? Could she put her heart back into this, knowing what they had been through, knowing how much it had cost her to get this far? She swallowed, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know if I can, Ryan," she said, her words coming out in a whisper. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore. You've lied to me. You've lied to me. You've lied to me. You've used me, and I'm not sure if I can forget that." Ryan stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "I know I've made mistakes," he said softly. "I can't undo what's been done. But I can try to be better. I can try to prove that I'm not the man who dragged you into this. I want to show you that I can be someone you can rely on, someone who won't hurt you again." Emily looked at him for a long time, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. She didn't know if she was ready to forgive him. She didn't know if she could ever forget everything that had happened. But she also knew that she couldn't keep living in this limo, in this false reality. She needed to make a choice. "You've already given me the money," she said, her voice steady. "The money that would change everything for my family. But it's not enough. I can't keep pretending, Ryan. I can't keep living this lie. I need to know that what we're doing here is real. I need to know that this isn't just some game for you." Ryan's eyes softened, and he nodded slowly. "I understand, and I want you to know that this isn't a game to me anymore. I'm not asking you to stay for the money or for anyone else. I'm asking you to stay for us, for the chance to start over and to do it right." Emily's heart skipped a beat as she listened to him. She wasn't sure if she was ready to take that leap, to trust him again, but for the first time in weeks, she felt something shift inside her. Maybe, just maybe, they could build something real. Something beyond the lies and the expectations. Maybe it was worth the risk. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll stay, but on one condition. We do this right. No more pretending." Ryan smiled, his face softening in a way that made Emily's heart flutter. He said, his voice full of relief. And in that moment, Emily realized that even though the future was uncertain, even though there were still so many questions left unanswered, they were finally on the same page. They were finally on the same page. They were finally ready to stop pretending. And that, she thought, was a step in the right direction. The story of Emily and Ryan teaches us a powerful lesson about the complexity of relationships, trust, and self-worth. In a world that often pushes us to play roles, and meet expectations, it's easy to lose sight of who we truly are and what we want from life. Emily's journey serves as a reminder that no matter how much we may want to help others, or how tempting it might be to chase after external rewards, true happiness and fulfillment come from authenticity and honest connections. It's not about the money or the glamour. It's about being true to yourself and making choices that align with your values. Ryan, on the other hand, shows us that no matter how many mistakes we've made, there's always room for growth and change. The key is to take responsibility for our actions and show up with sincerity and vulnerability. Only then can we begin to rebuild what we've lost and create something real and lasting. Ultimately, this story reminds us that we are not defined by our past mistakes or by the roles others try to impose on us. We have the power to change the narrative, to choose authenticity over appearance, and to build relationships based on trust and mutual respect. Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this journey of self-discovery and love, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a story that could inspire you. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear where you're tuning in from and what part of the story resonated with you most. Stay tuned for more.